Good morning, America. Or should I say, morning, America. I want to make something very clear. Last night was an apex, a climax to all the things that not only Trump has done in the past 4 years, but people like Joni Ernst, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, and all the Republicans out there who have bowed and condoned and backed up the actions and the lies of Donald J. Trump. This is not only Trump's fault. Oh, the largest portion of it is. But it's also their fault as well. Every time these people have repeated Trump's lies as if they were truth to poison their followers' minds, they became responsible for this, especially when they knew what they were backing was a lie. They became responsible for this. Every time they laid silent when somebody like Ahmaud Arbery or Brittany or even, yes, George Floyd was murdered by some heartless officer or some heartless citizen, they became responsible for this. They had their chance to stop this, but they didn't. No, they didn't. They wouldn't even allow a single solitary witness on the floor during Trump's impeachment. And they could have stopped it right there, but they didn't. So they were no better than taking their own flesh and inserting it into Trump's body to allow this happen. When they stood there and stayed silent as Trump sat in his bunker and ordered the military to descend down on peaceful protesters, beating them with their wands, trampling over them, and tear gassing them, they became responsible for this. When they sat silent as Trump stood up there and called for the protesters last night to come right up to the White House, they became responsible for this. This became their fault just as much as it was Trump's. And this did not only start when Trump was elected. They started this when Obama was elected. People like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell that stood up on the very first day of Obama's top term in office and said they were going to do everything they could to make Obama a one-time president, not even giving him a chance to show what he could do for the people. You are just as responsible for all this. You and your bigotry and your greed and your selfishness. So then last night, after 4 people died, one of them being shot because they were led to believe all these lies that you spewed out of your mouth. After that happens, and only after you were locked in some room somewhere in fear of your own life, Did you bother to stand up and say, enough is enough? Enough is enough now? You don't give one fucking shit of a damn about the people. You are just as much responsible. And yes, you too, Joni Ernst, right here in Iowa. And you too, Kim Reynolds, right here in Iowa. You both are just as responsible for this crap as Trump is. You might as well have been the ghosts standing within Trump's soul to allow this to happen. It's your fault as much as it is his. And I am going to sit here and mourn the lives of all four of those people, no matter how wrong they were in doing what they were doing. Just as much as I will mourn Brianna's death, Aubrey's death, and all the others out there who have been murdered and struck down and killed needlessly and senselessly because of some heartless person in power. And the most heartless of them all isn't just Trump. In fact, his heartlessness is understood and expected. The most heartless ones of them all are the ones who stood back silent, knowing full well what Trump was doing was wrong. How many people do you think could have been saved last night if you would have just got some fucking guts and stood up and spoke out? I know of one at least. She may have been led to believe your bullshit, which caused her to do some unspeakable act. But she was gunned down anyways to protect your worthless life. This is on you just as much, if not more, than it is on Trump. And now you're standing up there and you're saying enough. And now you're saying you want the 25th Amendment. You had your fucking chance when Trump was impeached. Now do the right thing. Impeach him now. Remove him from office and ban him from ever entering another political office. We have had enough. We were on the brink when the impeachment happened, and Mitch McConnell refused to allow the witnesses on the floor. We were tilting over the side when George Floyd happened, and Donald Trump had peaceful protesters tear gassed and trampled just so that he could hold a Bible upside down next to a church sign. We were at the brink and tipping over it then. If any one of you Republicans right now came in front of me, I would most certainly slap you. I would slap you hard. Mitch McConnell, if I seen your ugly mug I would slap you so hard your ears would ring. And I'm just a little old lady. But I wouldn't also put it past myself to pick up a cast iron frying pan and bash it over your motherfucking head. You're at fault. You're at fault for every death that has happened. Not only at the White House, but every rally out there. You are just as much as at fault as Trump is. You, who could give one shit of a damn about the American people until you are left cowering in the corner. You yourself in fear of your life. Because you think your life is more important, more precious than the woman who was shot last night. You're not. You're not more important. You're not more precious. You are no more than human. No more than human like any of the rest of them out there. And you let this happen. You even cause it to happen. You allowed it to happen. Every time you bent at Trump's feet, every time you backed up his lies, every time you condoned his horrible actions, every time you stayed silent as 300,000 people died, you became just as responsible as Trump. You had that gun in your hand just the same as that officer who was forced to shoot that woman. You became just as responsible as every single solitary one of those people who were in the White House wreaking havoc and destroying it last night. You might as well have been standing right beside them and marching. You might as well have been standing inside of Pelosi's office and kissing the ass of a man who was sitting in her seat. You might as well have set that pipe bomb down beside the doors of the RNC committee office. Just the same as the person who did it, so that they wouldn't get caught with it and end up in federal prison. Well, I'm telling you right now, although these people were victims of your hatred, of the lies of Trump that you yourself chose to endorse, knowing they were lies, although they were victims of all of that, these people deserve to be arrested and placed into federal prison. So maybe, just maybe, in the future, it will discourage any other citizen from following down the rabbit hole of liars like Trump. Maybe. just maybe, in the future, it will discourage anyone in Congress from kissing the boots of a person who is as destructive as Trump. Maybe. And maybe even some of you out there who through your silence, your acceptance, and your repeating of what Trump lied and bowed to, maybe you yourself deserve a stint in federal prison as well, or at the very least, to be taken out of the office you sit in, for you are just as responsible as Trump. You had your chance to stop this long before it even happened, but you refused to. You chose to solidify Trump's lies. And some of you last night, after all of this happened, still stood up and chose to solidify Trump's lies. Leffler, don't think I heard what you said. I didn't hear what you said. I heard it. I heard it clearly. Oh, yeah, you backed down. But you still reiterated what you knew was a lie. You still stood up there and spoused out the same lies that Trump had created. The problems that Trump are talking about in only Democratic states and Democratic districts are problems that happened in every single state and every single district in the United States of America. Some of the problems, yeah, they were man-made, but many of them happened because of the unprecedented times we are in with a pandemic that a failed president allowed to run freely through our nation and kill thousands and hundreds of thousands of people and infect millions. Your lies about the fact that, oh, during a pandemic, they took and they switched the votes to have mail-in votes, and that's, Pennsylvania did wrong when they did that. That's a lie, and you know it. You know full well it's a lie. You know that action was taken so that every citizen would have the right to vote in a safe manner. And you know full well that mail-in voting and absentee voting has been happening around this nation for decades. And you never had a single solitary word to say about whether or not it was fraudulent. Only after Trump espoused his lie did you start hollering about how it was fraudulent. Because you knew full well before that there was nothing fraudulent about it. The only thing that was fraudulent was Trump's removal of mailboxes just before the election to try and make sure that the people could not get their ballots in. Because Trump knew the majority of voters that would vote by mail would be Democrats. The only thing fraudulent was Trump's removal of sorting machines. Not just before election, just before the holidays, during the busiest time of the year on a normal year. But during the time of a pandemic? Really? You know full well that action was only taken to slow down the mail because Trump knew the majority of the people were going to be voting by absentee ballot for Biden. That's the only fraud that happened there. And everybody knew that when the ballots from the absentee were counted first, yeah, Biden was going to have a full, hard-on lead. We also knew that when the votes came in from the in-person votes, that Trump was going to start closing that lead. But it doesn't mean that Trump was going to end up winning that election. It does not mean that at midnight they all of a sudden found a few thousand more votes. No. It means that they counted the in-person ballots first and the mail-in second. Or they counted the mail-in first and the in-person second. It means that there was more people who voted for Biden in the mail-in votes. And there were more people who voted for Trump in the in-person votes. And you Republicans out there who were spewing Trump's lies knew this. And you sat out there and at best stayed silent. And at worst repeated every single word that Trump was saying to your constituents. So you are just as responsible for this as Trump is. So I don't want to hear a word out of your nasty mouth unless it is calling for Trump's impeachment, removal, and barring from ever running for a political office again. Because nothing more will suffice. And nothing less will suffice. This has to stop, and it has to stop now. And if any one of you actually gave a crap about your constituents and the American people and this nation as a whole, every single one of you who bowed at Trump's feet when you knew what he was doing was wrong, would have enough fucking guts to stand up and walk your ass out of the office you inhabit right now and never enter that office again, and move your ass aside so that maybe a better person could be put in your place.